Welcome to Bits About Books, the home for conversations with authors of breakthrough books on sales, marketing, and business. Founders, entrepreneurs, and individual professionals, we all need to keep track of ideas that are helping create our today and tomorrow. Bits About Books will strive to find those books and speak to their authors, go behind the scenes and understand what inspired the authors to write the books that they did and how they went about doing so. Through our conversations, we hope to gain insights that will help us to get the most out of our efforts. I'm your host Shubhanjan Sarkar, founder of PitchLink, the next generation buyer-seller engagement platform where our mission is to make buying easy. Welcome to Bits About Books. Thank you for your time and for joining us in this session. I have a favor to ask. While you continue to listen to the podcast, please leave a comment or rating at iTunes or wherever else you get your podcasts from. I personally look at each comment and will give you a shout out to each of you in our following episodes. It means a lot to hear from you. Our guest today is Park Howell, author of brand Bewitchery, How to Wield the Story Cycle System to Craft Spellbinding Stories for Your Brand.
And what I've seen has changed in now almost 20 years is where brands used to own the influence of mass media, the masses are now the media. And they own your story, they own my story, they own your listener's story. And it's really hard to cut through that noise out there. And that launched me into my next career of finding a way to hack through the noise and hook the hearts of your customers. Well, I think that stories scale. And what I mean by that is when a brand can tell a very powerful story that captivates a small audience at first, that audience becomes your megaphone. And they start resharing your story with the world, which leads to the most powerful form of advertising and marketing there is, and that's word of mouth marketing, which is absolutely free.
Park Howell is known as the world's most industrious storyteller, and his new book, Brand Bewitchery, helps readers clarify their brand story and teaches how to tell it through 3 proven narrative frameworks to captivate audiences and convert customers. Park is the founder of Business of Story, a proven platform based on his 10-step story cycle system. His popular weekly Business of Story podcast is ranked among the top 10% of the most downloaded podcasts in the world. Park was named Advertising Person of the Year in 2010 by the American Advertising Federation of Metro Phoenix. He consults, teaches, coaches, and speaks internationally. He has guided hundreds of brands in organizations like Dell, Hilton, Cummins, Walgreens, Banner Health, and the United States Air Force. He is a graduate of Washington State University and combines his degrees in communication and music composition and theory to help leaders excel through the stories they tell. Now, onto this exciting episode with Park Howell. Park, welcome to Bits About Books. I'm so happy to have you on the show and talk about your fascinating book, Brand Bewitchery. Welcome.
Subhanjan, thank you so much for having me here. It's great to be with you.
Tell us a bit about your work, the fascinating work that you are doing actually.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I have been in the advertising, branding, marketing world for 35 plus years. I live up here in northern Arizona in the United States. And during that time, I ran my own ad agency for 20 of those years. And I really enjoyed it when we were doing traditional media with radio, print, direct mail, outdoor, events, public relations, and there was no Yelp at the time. And back then it was more fun, I felt, because I thought the creative in the campaigns were way more creative and way more interesting than today. And in about 2004, I really saw that shifting as technology and the internet really took hold through e-commerce, websites, and of course, social media kicking off back then. And what I've seen has changed in now almost 20 years is where brands used to own the influence of mass media, the masses are now the media. And they own your story, they own my story, they own your listener's story. And it's really hard to cut through that noise out there. And that launched me into my next career of finding a way to launch, hack through the noise and hook the hearts of your customers. And I found the primal power of storytelling in a proper story structure is irresistible to the limbic system, the subconscious essentially, of your audiences, be they buyers, prospects, customers, colleagues, employees, or the communities they serve. So I completely pivoted away from the advertising world, and now all I do is consult, teach, coach, and speak on the power of story and teach people how to do it.
Fascinating. So there is a recognition of the story or the brand narrative over the last few years, right? So story is sort of coming back at the center of this discourse. What is actually driving that change? Is it because of the internet, or is it because of the ability to take the story to billions of people easily? What is it?
I think it's pure frustration. I think brands and their content marketers and their communicators are so tired of not being able to, as I say, hack through the noise and hook the hearts of their customers, that they're desperate to find ways to do it, because what they're currently doing, 95% of them, is not working for the amount of money they spend to push their noise and their information out in the world, when what they need to be doing is telling a proper story that our Homo sapien brain just loves. Think of it this way. So we have this, subconscious mind, this limbic system, this lizard brain that the rest of our chassis was built upon. And then we got this neocortex that really accelerated us from ahead of all the other mammals. And in this neocortex, we are brilliant. We can create technology that compounds at the rate of Moore's law. And oh, by the way, the amount of information we pour into the world at the rate of Moore's law. But you and I and everyone listening to this is still walking around with our monkey brain, that same limbic system that has not evolved appreciably. It's kind of like on the Darwinian scale of evolution, is the pretty much same apparatus that our ancestors used to navigate and survive the savannah. It's the same apparatus we're using to navigate and survive this onslaught of communication on the internet. That's why we need to go back to the primal power story, because that's simply the way our little story monkey brain is wired to make meaning out of the madness of being human beings.
If all brands start telling stories, advertising had an angle of better advertising, better narrative, helping, or simply bigger budgets, helping you cut through a dense sort of mass. In this case, how does it help multiple brands in the same, say, space tell stories, and how do you think that helps each one of them cut through the clutter?
Well, I think that stories scale. And what I mean by that is when a brand can tell a very powerful story that captivates a small audience at first, that audience becomes your megaphone. And they start resharing your story with the world, which leads to the most powerful form of advertising and marketing there is, and that's word of mouth marketing, which is absolutely free. So one might argue, yes, you can pour a bunch of money in and just bombard us like so many big brands do. We just tune it out after a while. We don't listen to it. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. The fire gets bigger, but we just kind of want to get away from it at that point. We have seen it time and again that a really powerful story, when it catches fire with the right audience, that they will then ignite it in the rest of the world. That's the power that I've seen really work in story. But so few people do it well. It's hard to even point to a lot of great examples. One I can point to, I think, is Airbnb. I think they're one of the best storytelling brands out there right now. Others, of course, Nike falls into that. Apple used to be good at it in the Steve Jobs era. I don't think they are anymore. A surprising entry into the storytelling world is Farmers Insurance. I was watching a golf tournament out of here on TV last week that Farmers sponsored, and they had some really brilliant storytelling spots in that I was really impressed with. Because it takes you on a journey. It invites you into a story, and it makes their business point for them without them beating their chest and beating you over the head with it.
Right. And as you rightly said, it's difficult, right? It's not everybody's cup of tea.
Well, it is and it isn't difficult. I mean, we are all Homo sapiens, and we are the only beings that we know of in the universe that think, act, plan, organize, and activate in story. I mean, you think about that. Every ad is nothing but a fictional account of what tomorrow could look like for you, the buyer. Now, the brand has to back that up and deliver on its promises it makes in that fictional story to make it a nonfiction, so you are bought in. Now, brands run around saying they're storytellers, but they don't even know what they're talking about. They don't even use story structure. They just throw something out and they tag it as a story, and it's not a story. And one of the most basic structures, the foundational structure that I work with all of my clients and is in my book, Brand Bewitchery, is called the ABT, and that stands for the and, but, therefore model. And what that is, very quickly, is it's the basic guideline, the basic field guide for storytelling. The and statement is a statement of agreement, or basically act one, that gets your audience in agreement with you. The but statement to follow is the problem that you are there to solve for. So it's like act two of any big story. It's where the problem and the action and intrigue happens. And then act three is the therefore. And the therefore is your solution. Let me give you a very quick example if I can. Here's the simplest and but and therefore that I can think of. And by the way, you use these at the beginning of a presentation or to set up a story. So here's the most basic one I can think of. Most advertisers communicate and care, but bore. Therefore, use the power of story to hack through the noise and hook the hearts of your Homo sapien customer. Now, what I've done there is set up that statement of agreement. I can get everyone nodding. You know, most advertisers communicate. Yes, they do. And they actually care. They're trying to do good things in the world. Okay, all right. I believe that. But they bore. Ooh, that's a big problem for the advertiser. Therefore, you know, and then you can fill in the blanks. Instead of bombarding me with nonsense, tell me a story to hack, you know, through the noise, connect with me, and excite me to action. Don't just move me to action, excite me to action. That's an example of how you use the ABT. And when you get that down, you start building this narrative intuition of setup, problem resolution that then all of your storytelling is built upon.
Right. So let me back up a bit over here. I mean, you were doing advertising for 2 decades, and now you wanted to shift careers. Why did you want to do that? Is it because of the change? Is it because traditional advertising was not working anymore? Was it because the new form of advertising was more accountable? So what really motivated you to say, okay, enough of this, I need to do this new thing?
Yeah, really great question. Well, I do back then and still do now, but not quite as much, a lot of brand development and brand strategy. And I just realized the work we were doing as an agency at that time, and this is around 2002, 2003, was not nearly as effective as it had used to be. And I went looking for an answer. And I was lucky because our middle child, our son Parker, was going to film school at Chapman University in Orange, California. It's a very prominent film school. He graduated in 2010, and he has been in Hollywood ever since as a director of virtual reality and mixed reality films and so forth. So while he was going to school there, and while I was looking for an answer of why advertising in my eyes just wasn't working anymore, and I could see it, in the numbers that just wasn't paying off, that I asked Parker, I thought, what does Hollywood know that I need to know as a marketer and communicator? So I said, Parker, when you're done with your books, since I'm paying for them, please send them to me. So he would send me books and videos of lectures, and I read everything there was on screenwriting. I learned about the hero's journey with Joseph Campbell.
Right.
And when I saw that, that's when I had my aha moment. I thought, oh my God, here is basically a template to most every powerful story ever told. And the hero's journey is a template for how we go through life. That's why we enjoy these stories. Why do we not use the same sort of template in brand development, story strategy for clients? And so I boiled it down and I mapped it to business, the hero's journey, and I created my 10-step story cycle system. Now, the very first time I used this on a brand, it was out here in Arizona in 2010, called Clinica Adelante. And it was a 30-year community healthcare system, meaning that their job was to make healthcare available to everybody regardless of your ability to pay. And they were in deep trouble because of a lot of different things, the recession and some other things that were going on. So we redefined their brand story using the story cycle system. We rebranded them to Adelante Healthcare. Adelante in Spanish means moving forward, or kind of like a brighter tomorrow. And they took off. Now, Aveen Sethi Tafoya, the CEO at the time, said they grew by 600% precisely because they had a new story in place and they got their people to buy into it. And they had a very powerful voice that differentiated themselves in the marketplace. After that experience, Sabanjan, I knew that I was onto something. And so I started using it with other clients, and then they started inviting me into their C-suites to teach their C-suite executives how to use the same approach in presentations and communication and so forth. Right. Arizona State University called me up and said, can you teach your story cycle system process in an executive master's program for executives around the world? And I said, yes, created a curriculum and did it for 5 years. And that's when I found my new love. And it wasn't running advertising campaigns. My new love was teaching leaders, marketing folks, and salespeople of purpose-driven brands how to excel through the stories they tell by evolving from an intuitive storyteller, which everybody is. All Homo sapiens are intuitive storytellers. I wanted them to become intentional using the 3 primary frameworks that I teach. The first is the ABT, the and, but, and therefore narrative, foundational narrative framework, followed by a very short story for big impact, where you use the 5 primal elements of a short story, which is basically an expanded ABT. And then, of course, the larger 10-step story cycle system to help you strategize and outline, like a screenwriter might, a big presentation or long-form communication. Again, all of these are based on setup, problem resolution, and gives you a blueprint on how to become an intentional storyteller and make your work for you every single time.
It's time for a short break. Stay with us after the break.
And I spent the next 5 years proofing out every concept in it, literally around the world, because I would be brand consulting. I would be doing story workshops. I'm teaching with executives. We would go to Amsterdam every summer with our class and spend a week there. And we would go down to Eindhoven and hang out with Philips Electronics for a day. And so I got a chance to really apply all of my thinking and my theory around the world of brands, large and small, and leaders. That's when then I came back after 5 years and rewrote that first book.
You are listening to a Business Podcast Network original. Podcasting is the fastest growing content marketing opportunity, which is untapped. We can help you craft your audio strategy and help leverage the wide reach and easy streaming capability that the smartphone penetration provides. It is easy, it is powerful and personal. Talk to us to find out how podcasting can help you build your brand and reach out to your targets like never before. Write to us at bpn@bizcast.in. That is bpn@bizcast.in. Business Podcast Network. Podcasts end to end.
Welcome back. I'm Shubhanjan Sarkar, your host for Bits About Books and founder of PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. Let's dive right back into the episode where we left it. So basically you transitioned into teaching, consulting first, and then you started teaching this methodology. When did you feel that you had enough stories to write up the book?
Well, funny that you asked, because I wrote the book actually before I started teaching. And I wrote Brand Bewitchery back in 2010, 2011, when I had really developed the story cycle system, and we had been using it for brand story strategy crafting. But when I got done with the first round, I didn't feel like I had enough experience with it that I wanted to dig and dive deeper with it. So I put it on hold, and I spent the next 5 years proofing out every concept in it, literally around the world, because I would be brand consulting. I would be doing story workshops. I'm teaching with executives. We would go to Amsterdam every summer with our class and spend a week there. And we would go down to Eindhoven and hang out with Philips Electronics for a day. And so I got a chance to really apply all of my thinking and my theory around the world of brands, large and small, and leaders. That's when then I came back after 5 years and rewrote that first book.
Right.
Now it's just completely filled with all kinds of anecdotes and examples. And every time I make a point in it or share an exercise with the reader, there's an example of it right on the very next page. And that's what finally got it to be done. And I published it just a year ago, and I've just had so much fun with it out there in the world. Brand Bewitchery. You can find it on Amazon and Apple Books.
You looked at this hero's journey and the way Hollywood was telling stories, and you boiled it down to this 10-step process. Can you explain a bit how you went about doing it?
Yeah. You know, it was so natural. It took me about 1 day. Because in my branding world, that had been my job of making complex messaging simple. And we were always going through the process, but it was kind of a corny process I was taught. Like, if your brand was a dog, what kind of dog would it be? And if it was a car, what kind of car, what would it be? What color would it be? And that always seemed like nonsense to me. When I saw that hero's journey, I'm going, oh my goodness, look at, we're taking an audience, be it a movie theater audience or a book, reader, on a journey from their perspective. We're trying to get them to buy into the heroes and the villains so that they can viscerally feel the action. Well, isn't that exactly what we want to have happen with our customers? That's the exact same thing. So I'm like, okay, well, here's this template. And depending on who you read, the hero's journey is anywhere from 12 to 17 steps. And it really dives into a lot of nuance that works for Hollywood writers and screenwriters that really understand it, but don't necessarily work in brand story strategy creation. So I boiled that down and simplified it to the 10 steps, but it basically follows the same parameter of, you've got a hero in their ordinary world, and the hero in this case is just your protagonist or the lead character. In advertising and marketing, that's your customer. You place them as a protagonist in your story. And then something has to happen to launch them into an adventure. So if you think about it in an and, but, and therefore, the ABT format, the first 4 steps in the story cycle system is the and. We want to understand where is the brand, the position in the marketplace. That's your ordinary world. Who are your primary customers? I ask people to prioritize their top 3, and let's focus on the very top one. Who's your number one audience? It could be customers, it could be colleagues, it could be stakeholders, whatever. So now we're in the step 2 of the story cycle system. Step 3 are stakes. Now we got to set the stakes. They got to want something to arouse interest that we will fulfill in our product offering. So what is that they wish for and want out of life? Wish for is emotionally. What do they wish to achieve? And then what do they want to physically purchase in order to fulfill that wish? My argument is all brands are in the wish granting business, just like all storytellers are. We tell stories to grant the wish of an audience to be entertained and to be transported to another world and to escape life for a little while. Right. Well, isn't that what we're selling? And then you move on, and I won't go through all 10 of the steps, but then you move into really what becomes Act 2, and that's when you embrace the villains, fog, and crevasses in your brand stories journey, as well as your customer stories. Villains are competition. The fog are just what you don't know, the unseen and unforeseen out there. And the crevasses are the gaps in performance, the gaps in the storytelling and whatever. And we walk through to the very end of the story cycle system. Chapter 10 is called Ritual, because what ritual you're ultimately getting to in the business sense is you want people to ritualize the use of your product or service, meaning to come back as repeat customers time and time again. You also want them to scale your story or ritualize your story through word of mouth marketing. Again, the most powerful form of advertising there is that costs you absolutely nothing. And then you want to be there to take them through the next revolution of the story cycle system. The one other thing I'd like to point out real quick is the hero's journey is a one and done circle. Hero starts in their ordinary world, has a call to action, goes on this extraordinary event, almost dies, adventure, almost dies, learns something new about themselves. They get leveled up. They're smarter, faster, stronger. They return back home to their ordinary world, but now they arrive with a boon. They are bigger, better, stronger, and they make everyone else around them bigger, better, stronger. That was the reason for their adventure. In the story cycle system, I've opened up that closed loop and I've made a spiral out of it, because to me, it's a spiral of engagement. And every time you take one revolution of the story cycle system, you have expanded that engagement, and now the story changes again, but you can follow the exact same pattern of the story cycle system for the next revolution and the next revolution. That first revolution I call brand awareness. They're just hearing about your story and you're intriguing them, arousing, that interest to bring them in. Revolution number 2 is brand adoption, meaning they've bought something from you. They've bought into your program. Revolution number 3 then is brand appreciation, meaning they are coming back for more and they are now telling your story with the world, and it keeps expanding from there.
Right. The simpler you put it out as, it's far more complex to actually execute it in a format which is simple for the end customer, which is your customer, to grasp it, right?
Right. And I learned this exactly backwards. So I started with the complex, and that was to take the hero's journey, boil it down to the story cycle system, and then use it as a story strategy document or guide. And it is complex. Even in the 10 steps, you need to go through a process, and it makes you stop and think like a screenwriter might about your own brand story. Then I learned the 5 primal elements of a short story for big impact, that if you are selling, if you are just out and you're trying to share a story, instead of thinking of the big story cycle system and telling that story, let's boil it down to an anecdote that you can tell in under 1 minute and have tremendous impact. And let's cut those 10 steps down to 5. And then I'm like, okay. Then I learned about the and, but, and therefore the ABT. That becomes the foundation for everything. So I added that, and I just reversed engineered everything. I said, you know what? Let's start with the ABT. Build that foundation and that intuitive narrative intuition of setup, problem, resolution. Then let's add a story on top of that makes your business point for you, because everyone can argue with your opinions, with your assertions, with your data, but they can't argue with the true story, well told, that makes your business point for you. And that story can be told in under 1 minute. That's where the ABT and the 5 primal elements of story comes in. Then for your longer form communication, it is the story cycle system for presentations and video and that sort of thing, that you just follow it and you say, in each one of these steps, you want to be making this sort of significant point. And you may use an ABT to do it. You may use a little anecdotal story to make that point. And you might even use some numbers and data at that point, because you set the context for them by first starting with that primal story that our subconscious brain absolutely loves to put everything else in the context.
Great. If people go through your book diligently, will they be able to come out with their story on their own, or they will still need some help?
Well, some people can do it. Certainly go through and try it yourself. In it, not only can you devise and craft your brand story strategy, but I also teach you the other methods. If you're just looking to find a way to tell a really crisp story in a sales organization, I show you how to do that in there. If your boss is only giving you 5 minutes to make your pitch about a new internal initiative, I show you how to use story structure, the ABT and the 5 primal elements of story in the first 2 minutes to totally hook them in. So now you got 3 minutes for the pitch. Right. So in it is, yes, you can use it to craft your brand story. Plus I've got an online course that you can follow at businessofstory.thinkific.com that helps amplify the book. And then some people too will go through the book and hire me. They will bounce their story off of me. They will have done their heavy lifting there, and then I help them put the final touches on it.
Of course.
And the one last thing I would mention is I've got a new course. It's a very short course on at businessofstory.thinkific.com called The ABTs of Selling. So over the past year and a half, I've been working with just hundreds of different salespeople and teams. In healthcare, I'm working with the Home Depot right now here in America, a big DIY retailer, with their salespeople. And they were looking for some refresher training. And so I built this 18-minute course, 3 short videos that walk you through each step of the and, but therefore of the ABT structure, and how you can apply it immediately in all of your communication. And you can find that again on Thinkific, businessofstory.thinkific.com. It's only $35, so you got absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Wonderful. So what I would request is just to share these links with me, and I'll put them in the show notes so it's easier for people to find them. They can just click through and take a look.
Absolutely.
Bits About Books is brought to you by PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. PitchLink makes buying easy by enabling high-quality engagement between buyers and sellers through its presentation and discussion modules. Sellers create customized sales narratives using sales collaterals and personal videos, and reach out to prospects through a non-intrusive, buyer-qualified engagement. PitchLink requires no installation or download and holds the entire repository of sales collaterals and buyer-seller conversations. Talk to us to know more about how you can engage with customers without intrusion. Call us on 99021 631 32.
Park, it was wonderful talking to you, and thank you for being so generous with whatever you shared today, because I think people get, when people get to your book, they will get a lot of value by getting the context of the book from this chat.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And Subhanjan, I really appreciate you having me on your show today.
Thank you so much. We have a fantastic lineup over the next couple of episodes with great conversations on breakthrough books with Julie Hansen, Andrea Waltz, Peter Kohan, Amit Agarwal, Fred Kopstek, and Mike Kunkel about wonderful books they have written. Subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you do not miss a single episode. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for being with us today on Bits About Books, where we talk to authors about breakthrough books on sales, marketing, and business. We hope this conversation helped inform and motivate as we all navigate a rapidly changing business environment. For us, these are enlightening conversations enriched with knowledge and expertise. We encourage you to go out and buy the book to learn firsthand and implement some of the great ideas we discussed today. We hope to have you with us again in the next exciting episode of Bits About Books. If you liked what you heard, Subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast platforms like iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcast from, and give us a rating while you are at it.
This Bizcast original podcast is produced for PitchLink, the next generation buyer-seller engagement platform, where the mission is to make buying easy. Hosted by Subhanjan Sarkar and produced by Rajiv Aditya. See you next time and have a wonderful day.